This is the video for the gravimetric analysis lab. The very first thing you're going to do in the lab is make your very first solution. So what you want to do is you always want to start with water at the bottom of your volumetric flask. We're making 250 milliliters, so I'm using a 250 milliliter volumetric flask. I'm going to use my funnel and just pour water in the bottom. On top of the distilled water, I'm going to add my solid. I've already measured out my 2 grams and I wrote down my exact number. So I'm just going to carefully pour my solid in there. And then you'll notice that some of the solid is stuck onto the weigh boat. So what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to use the distilled water and rinse all of that in to the volumetric flask. Rinsey, rinsey, rinsey. Get it all in there because we have to make sure that everything that we measured out ended up in the volumetric flask. Our next step then is to add distilled water until we get to the line. But you have to be careful because the funnel kind of holds some water. So go a little bit at a time, and I can see some of it stuck on the edge, so I'm just going to kind of try to rinse it off. Add a little bit at a time, let it run through. Once you get close to that line, you're going to want to stop, take the funnel out, and use the nozzle to go the rest of the way. So I'm going to use this till I get exactly to the line. And it goes quicker once you get to the neck. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to use my spinning station to dissolve it. So I'm going to take my little magnet, plop it in, and everything is all plugged in. So I'm just going to turn it on and spin it until it dissolves. Sometimes if you turn it up too high, it gets stuck in there. While that's spinning and dissolving, I'm going to measure out my 50 milliliters of the 0.2 molar calcium chloride solution. It's in a drop bottle. Making sure the bottom of the meniscus is good. I'm going to pour that into my beaker where I'm going to do my reaction. And I'm remembering that this graduated cylinder was for the calcium chloride. This other one I'm going to use for my unknown carbonate. So it looks like it's all dissolved. So I'm going to use my magnet getter outer and see if I can get it in there. Nope, it's going to overspill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some in here because I need 50 milliliters of it until it reduces its volume a little bit, and then I'm going to get my magnet out. So I'm going to pour the rest of the way for the 50. Careful. Careful. Okay. I need to react the 2, and as I react the 2, I'm going to stir. Make sure I get it all in there. Make sure it's all reacted so you can see it turn like a milky white. What that was is a precipitate reaction. So even though it looks like a milky white liquid, what it really is a white powder that's suspended in the water. My next step is to filter. So I have this contraption here. What this is we are going to do vacuum filtration using the pressure from the sink. Okay? So it's an Erlenmeyer flask that has a spout on it. It's a tube that is connected to the sink. And when we turn the sink on all the way, it creates a suction and is going to suck the water out. So this piece comes out, and I'm just putting it in here. At the bottom of this, I'm going to put a little piece of filter paper, And to make sure that it sticks good and doesn't stick out over the edges, because we don't want any of the precipitate to fall through, I'm just going to get it wet. We are going to end up putting this in the oven to dry, so extra water doesn't actually matter. So with the towel over the top, because this makes a really big, I have this hooked up to the wrong sink. Towel over the top because it makes a really big mess. I'm going to turn the water on full blast. It goes onto the tube. Not that part, this part. It's been a while. Okay, so since I'm turning the water on full blast, I'm going to cover it with a towel, just so it doesn't get all over the place. And as it filters, I'm going to pour my solution into it. It's kind of a two-person job. Somebody should be holding this and somebody can be pouring. Nice and slow. I'm swirling it to pick up the precipitate and pouring it in. And then I'm going to rinse my beaker and keep pouring it in. And it's going to keep filtering. If you notice, the bottom of this still has quite a bit of precipitate in it. So I'm going to filter it again. I'm going to turn my water off and empty it back into my beaker and refilter. Kind of a two-person job. And you're going to keep doing that until you get a clean filtrate, which is what's at the bottom. Turn my filter back on and filter again. And each time it's going to get cleaner and cleaner. I want to keep rinsing my precipitate with water. So that it's nice and clean. And I'm just filtering it until it completely dries. Or the standing water's out of it. Okay, so I would keep doing that, but for the sake of the video, my next step then is to not to drop this. Is to get my filter out, my filter paper out, because I need to put it in the oven. When we do this, we want to do the same thing we did with the crucible. You want to keep drying it until you have 2 consecutive masses that don't change. So I'm going to get my filter paper out with my precipitate on top of it, and then I'm going to set it in the oven. Before you do this, you should put your initials or something on the filter paper so we know it's yours when it comes out of the oven. So ideally, it would go in the oven, let it dry for maybe 5 minutes, take it out, check the mass, put it right back in the oven, let it dry for maybe 5 more minutes, and then we'll keep doing that until we get 2 consecutive masses. Don't forget to mass your empty filter paper because we can't scrape the precipitate out. We're just going to subtract it later. Okay? The retrial.